Welcome to Unpublished Opinions, the podcast where we say what we think, but never file. I'm Rachel Prince, Executive Director of the Delaware County Bar Association, and this is our very first episode. So if this sounds slightly unpolished, congratulations. You're part of the inaugural record. This podcast is where we pull back the curtain just a little on the people, the leadership, and the conversations that usually happen after the meeting ends, the motion is adjourned, and the ties are loosened. And I cannot think of a better first guest than the person who will be co-hosting Unpublished Opinions with me and the one leading this association in 2026, our incoming president, Matthew Bilker. Matt, thank you for being brave enough to not only be episode 1, but then to co-host alongside me the remaining of the year.
My pleasure. I'm glad that we went with the name Unpublished Opinions instead of slightly unpolished, which we're hoping not to be today.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes. All right. So for those who may not know you yet, or only know you from a meeting, an agenda, court, a signature, tell us who Matthew Bilker is outside of your formal bio.
Outside of my formal bio, well, I'm a longtime Delco resident. I grew up in Marple Township, and I currently live in Marple Township. And I've spent 4 years outside of Marple Township when I was studying at Penn State, and lived there with my wife and my 2 kids, where I spend the vast majority of my time either practicing law or attending youth sports events, from basketball to baseball to softball to soccer to now volleyball, and every once in a while some other activities for our kids. So every once in a while I get to decompress, and choosing to fill that time with podcasting.
Yes, I can't think of anything better. All right, so let's get into it. Did you always know you wanted to be a lawyer, or did you want to be a veterinarian first?
So no, I did not always know that I wanted to be a lawyer, and not to be trite, because I'm certain like 80% of the lawyers who have read To Kill a Mockingbird have said, well, I was inspired by Atticus Finch. But in 9th grade, that was the first time I started to think about it a little bit. But the reality was, when I was in college, I really didn't want to do any more school after undergrad. So I studied political science and journalism. I had originally spent about 3 weeks in regular science, but organic chemistry was not
The worst.
for me. So I just switched to a different science, political. I wanted to be on the news. I wanted to be in broadcast journalism, whether it was on like regular news or local news or sports news. That was my first, this is what I want to do when I grow up as a college student. And quickly learned, and knew this during school too, but quickly learned that to do that, to get tape, to get experience, you sort of have to start out by moving to like Montana and working on one of their like small local affiliates, right? Like it's a build up your demo tape profession from an early stage. This is before blogging really took off. It's before YouTube channels really took off. It was an old school, more traditional form of journalism, but it was at a time where Twitter was emerging and social media was emerging. And so the courses at Penn State really hadn't like absorbed those changes yet. So I graduated. I spent a few minutes thinking about whether I wanted to move to go be a journalist, and somewhere along the line said, let me take the LSATs, and the rest is sort of history.
Yeah. There is probably no statement that says you went to college in the early 2000s than the one you just said, with not having social media the way we do now.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
that was it. I feel like if you were after like 2010, you probably wouldn't, maybe you would have had a different career path then.
Who knows? I mean, I can remember sitting in my sophomore year dorm, and I had like a propped up bed where my desk was underneath the bed in the loft, and sitting on my computer and hearing like, you got to download the Facebook. It was called the Facebook, right? And so that, like, it was happening while we were.
And you had to be in college to have a Facebook account.
Yeah. It was at psu.edu account. That's right.
Okay, so what is something people are surprised to learn about you that I was actually surprised to learn about you wanting to be in journalism. I would have not guessed that.
Yeah, I can't stand the spotlight. I know.
Is there anything else that people would be surprised to learn about you?
A tough one. Here's what I tend to say when this like icebreaker comes up. Um, I've never seen the movie The Goonies. And yeah, so the look that you're giving is the look that I get from our generation when I say that. Like there's a furrowed brow. There's actually usually a little bit of anger directed towards me. But at this point, I have not seen it and I'm never going to see it because I kind of like saying that.
But like how? I feel like it's still on TV.
Yeah, I don't know.
TV.
I don't know. I don't know. That's the how, why, who, what. I get all of that with regard to that question. Just haven't done it.
I'm judging a little. I'm judging a little. Okay, so let's get into the Bar Association and your journey from young lawyer to president. When did you first get involved with the Delaware County Bar Association and why?
I started my career. I graduated from law school, and my first job was as a judicial law clerk for Judge Capuzzi. Judge Capuzzi had just won an election, which took him from district justice in Marple Township to the common pleas bench, and hired me as his law clerk. And Judge Capuzzi's a longtime supporter of the Delaware County Bar Association. And I remember standing in his chambers and he was saying I needed to join. It really wasn't a question of do I want to join? It was join. And I didn't really know what it meant to join the Delaware County Bar Association. I mean, I know I have an idea from being in law school what a bar association was, but it was not anything that I was like, this is something that I'm going to do when I become a lawyer. I'm going to join the local bar association and get involved. And at the time, I thought it was a great way of, well, look, this will be great. I'm 25 years old. I don't know anybody except for my boss. It's a good way to meet people. It's a good way to start getting involved. I was thinking I was never going to be a career law clerk. We do have a lot of career law clerks in Delaware County. I always wanted to get out and join a private practice at some point in time. So I thought it would be a good way to network and to meet people. And so that was how we started off. And at the time, again, I said this is 15 years ago or close enough. Um, the the legal market was going through a lot of changes, especially for law students who were getting ready to graduate around 2010, 2011, 2012. The economy had recently collapsed a few years before that, and big law in cities was hit really hard. And a byproduct of that was there was a lot of young lawyers in the county practice, whether it was DAs or public defenders, which I know that there's still a lot of young lawyers involved with those, but there was a lot of young lawyers involved. And the young lawyer section was really robust. There were meetings where you would have, between 20 or 30 people. It
That's
was a
crazy.
great way of networking, of making friends, of making relationships with professional colleagues. The group of people, the group of lawyers that I came up with in the YLS are really, they're still some of my closest friends in this association. But obviously you're young, you're new, and you see how the committees play out and sections play out, and you see there's something called the Young Lawyers section. And so I said, yeah, that feels like a good place to get started, and start getting involved.
That's awesome. So I do want to do a shout out to Judge Capuzzi because I feel like since being here, I've heard so many people tell me that it was Judge Capuzzi that persuaded them to come down to the bar. So
He was
good
a
job.
he was a big supporter of the bar association. He still is, right? He's at his Judge Capuzzi just finished up his I guess last term as a formal judge and senior judge in common pleas, and is now going for another round on the board of directors. So
Which is very exciting.
he's starting his 2 year term. That's right. So he's a big proponent. And I'll say, I can remember again, I got involved with the inner court early on too. Again, Judge Capuzzi driven. And I can remember, because this isn't a question you asked, but it was sort of like a guidepost for me as I think about like the bricks that have been laid to get to where we are today. I can remember being at an in court dinner at the old townhouse, and Judge Dozer bopped over to me and was asking about whether I was going to come to bench bar. And I didn't even know what bench bar was this time. My wife and I had just had a kid. I should say my wife had just had a kid, and I it was a new
You
parent.
were there.
I was
You were
coaching her
accompanying
son.
her.
He was born in March, and Judge Dozer was like, "You got to come to bench bar. It's the greatest thing. And there's scholarships, and there's ways that you can come that you're not going to get hit in the wallet." And again, wasn't really a discussion. A different way of presenting than Capuzzi would do it by saying you're doing this, but the effect was the same. He helped me. He connected me with the then president, or not the president, the executive director at the time, Bill Baldwin, who guided me towards this scholarship. And my wife was thrilled that with a 3-month-old baby, I was like, I'm going to be away for a couple days in June, golfing and socializing. But again, I can remember that, and it was still the very early portion of my DCBA life. I drove up with Capuzzi and Dozer to bench ball. I just remember it was a terrifying experience, Rachel.
I've heard that
Yeah,
them in the car together
yeah, yeah.
was something.
I remember picturing, what if we all die in a car crash? There's going to be this long article about these two, like, long-time public service and judges, and the last line is going to be like also passing in a car crash, like Matt Bilker in the back seat. Because it was a risky drive. We did get there. We did get there and back in one piece, but
Thank
uh,
God.
but I had firsthand observation of that, which was I still, it's funny looking back on.
So it's funny you mentioned that because we have the Unbank magazine coming out, and Judge Capuzzi actually wrote an article in that magazine and mentions how terrifying it was to drive with Judge Dozer in his article.
Well, what he
So
would do,
you just
I
validated
can,
that entire article.
I can provide a secondary source. Like, he would turn his head the full way when he was talking to you, and it was like when you're a teenager and you're driving with your mother and she's holding on to like the handle on the top. Look out! Like, that's how I was in the back seat. Scary, but we made it.
Here you are.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So dare I say, was that the moment where you realized I'm really invested in this? Or was there another like, aha, this is something I want to like pursue long term?
I don't know if it was with like it's quite as much of a aha moment as it was. Like I said, it was a series of things that I was enjoying it. I was enjoying participating with the young lawyer section. I think for lawyers, and this is something that I'm sure we'll talk about later, and that is going to be one of the things I want to focus on and over the next year. But it's nice having collegiality in the profession, right? It can be a job where it's draining, it's emotionally exhausting, and having colleagues who know what you're going through, who understand the job, who can empathize or sympathize or just have a beer with, right? Like, that is something that mattered to me back then. It's something that matters to me now. And I think it matters to a lot of our members. So yeah, I don't know if it was ever like, yeah, like this is the moment. It was just, I like what I'm doing. I think that this is for me. I think it can help me become a better professional. I think it can help me with my career. It can certainly help me with the balancing of the practice of law. Um, so all of those things, again, I'm thinking about this 15 years later with the benefit of hindsight. I don't know that I was thinking about it like that at the time. It was just like, this is working, and I like doing it, and I'm going to keep doing it.
That's good. I mean, that sounds sustainable. That sounds like a more sustainable thing than just one moment.
Right.
Like, this is great, you know?
Mhm.
Um, okay, so we're going to talk about your presidency now. You have worked your way up. I did some quick math, but I think to become president, you essentially have been on the board of directors for a minimum of 8 years. So you have been very involved.
That's right.
The more involved you get, obviously, the more you realize how much goes into being president of the Bar Association. So let's talk about that a little bit. I don't know that many members who have not been president realize that it is an everyday job that you are volunteering for. It interferes both professionally, personally, as you know. There's a lot of times that you're doing things at night. We just were out on a Friday night celebrating America's kickoff birthday party. And it does take a lot of time. So what does it actually mean to you now that you're here and you are president of the Delaware County Bar Association?
So what does it mean to me? I don't know that I could have answered that before the past week and a half. It was something that I was looking forward to, right? Like it's something that from the early parts where I thought, yeah, I'd like to get involved in board leadership, that I had looked towards. And certainly when you get on the executive committee, you have a good feel of where it's going, right? The goal is to continue to rise up through the executive committee. You never really know for sure until you're president-elect, and that is like an automatic triggering of the presidency the year following, right? So I had not gone into this thing with any type of like core objectives or goals until I want to say 8 or 9 months ago when I started to think about like what it was that I wanted to do, what I wanted for the association. Um, Bill Clinton had this old adage that I always think about, and it was, "What do you want your legacy to be?" Right now, first of all, I understand this is not the United States of America that I'm the president of, right? But I think about this with a lot of leadership roles. That what is it that you want your legacy to be? And I remember initially I thought that was sort of a selfish mindset, but actually, and certainly as I've gotten involved in different boards and different leaderships along the way, it's something that I've thought about because it's setting a thought at the onset of what I want to accomplish, what I want for myself, what I want for the institution. I think it helps guide a lot of the actions that you take to get towards that. It's a different way of setting a goal, right? So what I am, yeah, I do feel a responsibility. I was looking over the 89 presidents before me as we're getting ready for the president's dinner coming up, and a lot of names that I know well, a lot of like titans of our local bar association are on that list. I do feel like a degree of pressure to do well, to make them proud of the work that we are all doing together. Um, but I feel comfortable with that. I feel comfortable with that pressure. And so that responsibility to former members, to current members, to future members is what I'm thinking about in terms of making sure that the stewardship of this association, that they feel like it's in good hands. So again, from a general standpoint, I want people to be engaged. I want them to have the same type of experience with the bar association that I have, and certainly that's going to be in different ways, right? Like it may be a section that you're involved in, a family law section, where you're achieving those types of goals and those types of things that matter to me. I know that matters to a lot of our members. So I want to provide as many ways as possible for members who want to be actively engaged, to do that, right? With those opportunities have always existed, and I just want to lean in on that. That's what I would say my overriding goal is. I want collective ownership for our members of this association. I want them to say, I'm doing a CLE. Everybody come see my CLE, right? I'm doing this roundtable with 3 or 4 other colleagues. Like I want them to be proud of the work that they're doing and the work that we're doing.
That's amazing. I think that your pride in the organization definitely shows just by talking to you. And I would love if you, for me, your impact could do that to other people, bring people in and get them excited about being part of this association again. And to be fair, I don't think that there is anyone that can do that better than you.
Thank you for that.
I really
Appreciate the
don't. I
endorsement.
think that your excitement and energy is what we need to make that happen.
Right.
So
I appreciate that.
fingers crossed.
We're gonna do the best we can. And again, I try to speak in we's and not I's, and that is not for show, right? Like I think that the more we are all involved, our executive board, our board of directors, our section members, our older lawyers with experience, our younger lawyers who are looking for mentorship. I think the practice of law outside of bar associations, I think the practice of law can be a spectrum of collaboration to cutthroat isolationism. And I never felt like, like for instance, I'm a personal injury attorney. There are dozen or so other personal injury attorneys, more than that, right? Dozens of personal injury attorneys involved in the Bar Association, right? In one sense, they're my competitors for business, right? And if I viewed it that way, it could be uncomfortable at events. There could be, there can be backstabbing. There can be things that you don't want when you're a professional, right? And on the other side of that, and this is the side that I've come up with at my firm and with some of my mentors and whether they're at my law office or in the association or people that I've gotten to know, there's collaboration, there's the exchange of ideas, there's listservs and groups that meet and talk about strategies to make the collective thing that we do, which is representing victims of accidents or victims of negligence, that make it better for this group in total. So like it's a bunch of fish swimming in the same direction without regard necessarily to how's this going to impact me on a micro level if somebody goes with this lawyer instead of me. That's not what we're looking for, right? We're looking for how can we all become better lawyers together, right? How can we share information so in the collective, this group of people who need this type of lawyer get better representation, get better services, get better outcomes, verdicts, settlements, whatever it might be, right? So anyway, that's one of the things that one of the principles that guides me, one of the things that I think about how the benefits that I get from this association, what I want for others.
Love that. What do you feel most honored by? Has there been a moment in the Bar Association where someone said something to you where you walked away and actually kept thinking about it? Do you feel honored that you just made it this far? Does anything stick out in your mind? Or is there something you feel most honored by that has nothing to do with the Bar Association? Maybe
No, I think again, I don't have one of these like these aha moments. I do feel both like honored and proud of getting to this point. Because I don't think you get here without the faith of your colleagues. And that is something that many of us seek, right? We seek validation in what we do.
absolutely.
We seek respect. We seek to be mentors on our own, right? And so to get to this point of being the president of the association, I do think I do feel honored by that. It's not like a political election, but it's an election, right? We go to an annual meeting and you have to be endorsed by a quorum of the members of the Bar Association to get onto the board of directors, to get onto the executive committee, and ultimately to ascend to the presidency. And I don't take that lightly, right? I think that's important. I think that the people that go to those meetings care about who they're endorsing and what it is that they're doing. And yeah, like having people stand up and say, I support Matt for president-elect, knowing that he's going to be president is not beyond me. That is something that I will not forget, and I am very aware of and appreciative of and honored by.
So it is very important, and not to bring humor into such a touching response, but I have heard that if quorum was not there, there is people counting
Oh
and it
yes.
can wreak havoc.
Oh
So
yes.
it
That's
is
right.
important, and it might not be a political election, but it's taken very seriously.
Right. It is. And it should be.
Yes, agreed. Is there anything that has surprised you as you've started this role? Now, I know you're officially president as of January 1, but you and past presidents have all met. Like you have been really working towards this for months now. Is there anything that surprised you about it while you were preparing?
So that's a good question. The first thing I will say is, as you know, my partner Mike Davey was the president before me.
Hmm.
And during his presidency, I would pretty regularly give him a hard time. Like his office is 6 feet from mine, right? I'd go into his room and be like, "Hey, are you planning on doing any work for our law firm this year, or are you just in full president mode?" And I'm kidding, and he'd laugh, and that was funny until January of this year on day one, where I was like, "It's 2 o'clock, and all I've done is like sort of answer emails and text with you, Rachel, and message about the DCBA and prepare a speech and it's I was like, oh, and I went and I was like, remember when I said that? And he was like, uh-huh. So, um, so I tend to be pretty efficient with things that I do and work that I do, and even with that as one of my skills, it is a lot of work. I don't know if I'm surprised by it, but I am. I can acknowledge it. It has been. I don't know if it's a lot of like pen to paper work, but it's a lot of time.
Communicating. It's a lot of communicating.
Yeah. So, you're right. So I did meet with and I have a whole list of lawyers of the past who I had hoped to meet with, and I just hadn't gotten around to it. Either they're busy, I've been busy, the holidays were wild, but I did have a chance to meet and sit down with a number of past presidents. As I tried to get ready for this role, I've got a number in my law firm. That was easy. I had a chance to sit down with some others, especially ones who are still really particularly involved. I sat down with Colleen Neary. I sat down with Bob Ferkser. I met with Judge Kenny, who is just really, really involved with the DCBA, and I met with Judge Cardizano. I wanted to talk about what was important to them and what things that they liked, what things that they would like to see, what things they might like to see done differently. And all of these little meetings, whether we ended up in a conference room or for coffee or for lunch or for a beer, which like I did all of those. It was They all gave me like great little nuggets, and I have notes of these meetings where I was like, I just feel like I feel prepared going into this year in terms of like what matters to this generation and these people who have sat in this, quote unquote chair. And that can like I can sort of go back and rely on when things happen, and things inevitably do happen, and surprises do happen, walls fall down,
Yeah.
funding gets crazy. So I do feel like nothing surprised me by those, except maybe just and I wouldn't say I'm surprised by this, like the warmth that was shown, right? Like they're all rooting for me, right? They're all rooting for us. They're rooting for the association to I think Mike said this in speech, even if it's just a little bit better than the year before, right? Like that's what we want. If this year is a little bit better, and then Jen DePillo's year after mine is a little bit better after that, like that's growth versus I don't know what you would call it, retraction, the opposite of growth. That's what I think, the direction that we all want to go.
Absolutely. We kind of hit on vision. I know you want a lot of involvement, but when you look ahead and we're at the end of 2026, what do you want members to say? What they're telling me about your year, or they're coming up to you to congratulate you for your year. What do you hope members say about your year as presidency?
I understand this question, and I guess the way that I think about it is, I think it's more about like that particular member than about us, right? Member X year going up and saying, "How was your past year?" What I'd like them to say is like, "I had a really good professional year," right? Like things went well for me in my career, and what I hope is part of that is their involvement in the bar association, even if it's subtle, right? Like I understand that this is a collection of attorneys who are, many of whom are full-time practitioners, or judges who are sitting on the bench all day, right? It's not the only thing they do. But what I hope is that they say, there was a support system for me to when I needed it, right? Like there was a support system of lawyers who do what I do, who were willing to hear out when I had a particular challenge. There was a support system of lawyers who had experienced a variety of things that I knew that I was headed for and that I could get ahead of by speaking with them, right? There was a group of lawyers who had a bad day, and we sat down and had a beer together and shot the you know what over the course of an hour, and like I relaxed. Right, like it's not always a relaxing profession. Always, it's rarely a
Yeah.
relaxing profession. Right, so I hope that is the mindset of so many of them. And I talk about lawyers. I hope that's true for judges too, right? Like I hope that they say, some of the programming that we saw, like I love getting updates on on like changes in case law as they're evolving. I've had judges on the past when I've sat for civil CLEs at bench bar come up and say, "Can I have your PowerPoint?" Which is like so flattering on one hand, and on the other, it's like it's great. Like this is stuff that we're doing that is important and helping people like stay up to date on things in a profession where it's hard to, there's a lot of changes all the time. It's hard to stay up to date. So what I want, how do I reduce that to what do I hope? Like, I hope they find value. I hope our members find value in the year 2026 and the things that we do to help them become better lawyers, the things that we do to help them form and develop relationships with their colleagues, the things that we do that helps them form and develop relationships with the bench, right? Like our bench bar conference is so great because one of many reasons it's so great is like we have really high judicial involvement, and that matters for lawyers. Like getting face time and speaking with judges, and again, not talking about your cases, but just talking to them. Talking to a judge at the start of your career is hard, right? Like I had it sort of simple because I had to talk to one every single day and like develop that skill. But for people who don't interact with judges all the time, that is something that it is not a given. It is a skill that develops. And I think like providing those types of resources and those types of settings for people, I think that helps their career, especially litigators.
Absolutely. This is kind of just like, is there any areas that you're passionate about improving or expanding off the top of your head? Or are you more just wanting to expand on things that we are like projects that we already have going? Or is there anything that you want to kind of start?
So generally no. Like I'm not looking for a rebuild. I don't think a rebuild is necessary. I think about the years that we've come through. There's been some great stuff that has been developed by this association. I think our bench bar conference is awesome. That's sort of like, the crown event of the year for the Bar Association. And I think over the years, I have always really enjoyed going. I think the programming has been great. I don't know what it is that or necessarily like there's a certain je ne sais quoi of what I'm looking for, right? I don't know how to put it into words of how to make things better, except like the consistent, regular promotion, the welcoming of people to these events, the reinforced connectivity. I want people to take some chances, right? Like us getting assigned a CLE, for instance, is ominous. And you never want to do it until it's over. And you're like, that was great. Like I first of all, like either I was experiencing this and got to teach people, or I learned something that I didn't know before, and I helped. And the general mindset of people who do those is like they like doing them afterwards, right? After all the work's done, they like participating in those. So to answer your question, generally, there's not a whole lot of like I'm not looking to rebuild things. And I think as the year goes on, like we'll like you and I and the committee and the board and everybody involved will sort of work together to tighten the nuts and bolts where they need to be tightened to hopefully like move towards these types of objectives where things do get just a little bit better. I'm looking forward to the one new thing, and it's a new thing because it has to be a new thing, is our semi-quincentennial committee.
Yes.
I asked Colleen Neary to chair that committee. Colleen's obviously a well-known DCBA attorney, a history nerd, like many of us are in this profession.
No one better than
And
her to chair that committee.
we have some great ideas, as I know for this year, as we come up to the 250th anniversary of our country's birth. And so I'm really looking forward to see like how some of those events pan out. There's some big ones that we're doing where we're going to do this reading of the Declaration of Independence at our 49 municipalities, and we're hoping that we're able to get 49 different members to read this and put together a montage that I think will be like one of those Old Testaments that in however many years we'll have to look back on. That is a really unique opportunity, and would love to have one of those readings at the 1724 courthouse in Chester, because that is one of the locations where the Declaration was read out loud on July 8th, 1776. So I love that idea. I love how that's going to sort of like interweave with a lot of the things that we do throughout this year, through Law Day, hopefully, through, who knows, maybe we'll have an opportunity to either do a CLE or some kind of an event at Bench Bar where like that is all tied in. I think it's a really exciting time. And when you turn on the
I mean,
news.
we're so close to it in Delaware
Yeah,
County too, so
it's
it's going to be
incredible.
so fun.
But you turn on the news and there's always so much negativity that I'm looking forward to like a this is a really positive experience for America. Like I get that there's criticism. I get that there's things that people want changed, but like it's still the greatest country on earth. And I look forward to promoting that about the country, about our area. And I think our members will really like it. I think they will enjoy participating in some of these events that we have. I know I will.
Me
And again,
too.
I hope they find value in that, right?
All right. So one thing that I really love and found out quickly after starting working here about this association is that it is deeply rooted, but also open to evolving. How do you plan to balance honoring tradition, which is so important, but also moving forward and making new traditions or evolving some of the older ones?
I think you said the right word, and that is, you asked how do you balance it? Like, if you
Absolutely
how do you deal with
balance.
it? The answer I would say is like all things in balance, right? Like that you're right. Like we have long-standing traditions that you don't want to disrupt, and if subtle changes need to be made, then subtle changes need to be made. That doesn't mean that you're disrupting. So what I think you do, and again, I have some experience with this, is when you're talking about making changes, you want your stakeholders involved, right? You don't want to spring widespread like changes on people who may resist to it without input. And I'm big on that, right? Like now, again, there comes a time where executive decisions need to be made, and then they get made. But I try not to make those when I'm in a role like this without involving others, without involving those who those types of decisions are important to. That way, even though someone might not agree with this or that or the other thing, they understand it, and they were invited to discuss it. Right? That's a way that we get buy-in, right? Even when it doesn't go a certain way, buy-in's important in associations like this. We want to welcome new members. We want to welcome current members. We want to welcome our 50-year members. We want this to be a place where everybody is comfortable and happy with how things are going. Again, you balance it. Right? Like there's nothing off the top of my head that I'm like, I got to change this or this or this. But if that happens, if something like that happens throughout the course of the year, you find a way to balance like a sweeping change with doing it in a way that makes people both understand it and that works for the institution.
All right, so this podcast is called Unpublished Opinions. So we're going to get a little off the record, but keeping it safe for work.
It's not quite off the
Um,
record, is it? We're very we're very on the record.
what's something about leadership that you feel people do not talk about enough?
Um,
If anything.
one of the things, and again, whether it's this is not necessarily DCBA leadership, but I one of the things that I've noticed about leadership that is it just is what it is. I find it frustrating is a lot of times you sort of gotta take it on the chin when there's criticism, and this is something that I am experienced with in my town, being on the Marple Newtown School Board. Is social media is sort of a scourge of the earth these days, and a lot of times people will vent on social media about leaders, and those types of posts, whether they get traction or they don't get traction, they usually come to your attention, and you just kind of gotta take it, right? You got to turn the other cheek. I remember talking at a judge's cocktail party with Judge Cardizano and Pat Daly and Kristen Rushing one afternoon. It was in the midst of COVID, and it was a horrible time to be a school director in the midst of COVID.
Can
And
imagine.
I was lamenting social media, and Pat, I'll never forget this. Pat was like, I understand why you don't like this because I don't know if anybody who loves being loved more than you. And everybody laughed. And I said, Pat, it's worse than that because I do love being loved, but I hate being hated. It was something that as a leader, like again, it's a skill that evolves where you have to, if you don't have thick skin, you have to develop thick skin, or you
Yes.
have to pretend that you have thick skin because you can't get into the sandbox over and over and over again. It's not going to get better. You just kind of gotta absorb that criticism's a part of the game and take it and move on.
I also think as long as you know that what you're doing has the best interest in mind, that can make taking it on the chin a little easier,
I mean, it helps you
at
sleep
least
at night, right? Like
internally.
it helps you sleep at night. You say you try to find certain posts to be guided by, and if you stick with them, it helps. But on the other hand, people are still talking, and they don't care about your your principles. They care about what they care about, right?
Exactly. Yes. All right. So let's move to a lighter question. I'm thinking that many of our members know we have less and less young lawyers joining the bar. So one of our goals is to bring in as many young lawyers as we can to keep this association vibrant and going and carrying on these traditions. What advice would you give someone who is thinking about getting more involved, but isn't sure that they have the time or the confidence, like they're nervous about going to an association event where they don't know someone, so they hold off?
I think it's probably a situation we've all been in before at some point, right? Because there's always going to be a first. There's always going to be a first cocktail party or a first event for everybody, right? What I would encourage those individuals, those younger lawyers to do is to lean in, right? To jump in with both feet. This is a welcoming association. Whether you have, our newly minted lawyers who are younger, or perhaps my generation of early 40 somethings, or the generation before mine, right? I have felt so welcomed by the generation before me, and maybe the generation before that. Like, they want to help. I found people here to be, it's one of my favorite parts about this group of people. They want to help others, right? So, like, there used to be a formal mentoring program when we had so many young lawyers that were involved, and I was assigned Lynn Schoenfeld as my, like, formal mentor. She had just been the president of the association. We met a couple times. Again, just like those meetings help, right? One other person in the room. So you gotta, at some point you gotta pull the Band-Aid off and get in there. But really the easiest way to do it is just get involved, right? If you're young, sign up for the Young Lawyer section. It's again, it's guided a lot of us in leadership along the way. If that's not for you, but you practice family law, then get involved in the family law section, right? Or the Women in the Law Committee. If you're an intellectual who does want to do more events with cocktails and dinners and learning, the Anna Court is a great way to get involved. Again, those meetings early on were in my career, before I had consistent youth sports events all the time, were really great to go to. So it exists, right? These ways to get involved in our association exists, and if there's ways that we can help, and when I say we, you, me, the members who aren't these newbies, I want to do that. We want to do that. Like,
Uh, we definitely do.
if you are uncomfortable at a cocktail party, come up and talk to me, right? Like, I want people to not be standing saying, this is not comfortable, right? There is a group of people who are very welcoming here, and in no time, you're one of the guys or girls, such as it is. It's not hard to get into that.
Agree. I agree. As a non-lawyer that is running the association on the day-to-day tasks, I can attest that everyone that I have met, for the most part, has been so welcoming. It's like coming home. It honestly is. Obviously, the first couple events are scary, even awkward a little, but once you put yourself out there and you want to do it, everyone welcomes you in with arms wide open,
That
and
that
it's
first
amazing.
that first bench bar I went to, I signed up to go, and again, I know Judge Capuzzi, Judge Dozer, based on, because of the fact I was a clerk, I knew a couple of DAs and PDs who were at this conference, and I signed up to golf, which is adventure in its own for me because I'm just an awful golfer, and I was paired with Bruce Roger, who has passed. He's a former president of association, and, like, I was like, all right, this guy is a good golfer. I'm on this group of good golfers, and, like, this is gonna be rough. And Bruce was just like the nicest, warmest, most welcoming guys that I could have been paired with on this particular occasion. And again, at the time, I didn't realize he was a past president. I didn't realize how involved he had been with the DCBA. I just knew he was a lawyer that I was paired with. Like, I didn't know what it meant to be the president outside of the fact that it was somebody who was in charge. And I just remember he was like, we were talking about golf because like it takes me like 10 shots to get to the hole. He was like cheering for me when I finally got one right. It was just really, it was a really, it's a nice memory to look back on that I think about in terms of like, ripping the Band-Aid off and getting out there and getting to know people.
That's amazing. We're going to end with a rapid fire round and has nothing to do with the association. Answer as quickly as you can. You ready?
Yeah.
Morning meetings or evening meetings? Or morning events or evening events?
Evening.
Okay. Email or phone call?
Email.
Zoom or Zoom or in person?
In person.
Coffee or beer?
Coffee. Oh, I thought you were going to say tea. Beer.
One word to describe the DCBA. One word, go.
Value.
One word you hope describes your presidency.
Engaging.
Yes. Love that one. All right. So before we wrap up, do you have any closing thoughts or anything you want to remind or let members know as you now head into 2026 presidency?
I'll be brief because I think I hit on most of
the
things we talk about, right? What I want, if you're listening, if you're among the 10s or the 20s or 30s or whoever's listening to this podcast and has made it through to the end, if I can help you, I will. If our association can help you, whether it's professionally or not professionally, we will. I want you to I want this to be something that's part of your life that you're like, I'm glad that's there.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt, not just for joining me today because normally you'll be my co-host, but as our first inaugural person that we interview, but also for your commitment to this association and the members it serves.
It is my pleasure.
I'm looking forward to having you on the side of the podcast during our next episode. And thank you to everyone who may have made it this far in the podcast and listened to the very first episode of Unpublished Opinions, What We Think But Never File. We'll be bringing you more candid conversations, leadership perspectives, some surprise guest appearances, ones you may not be expecting, and behind the scenes insight throughout the year. Until next time, this conversation is adjourned. We can just talk real quick because
I thought it went well, right? That was pretty good.
I think so. Where are we on time?
It's 10:56. I mean, it's about 45 minutes.
Okay, perfect. That was we did it. That was the goal.
Yeah.